Hey, everybody. We are so thrilled for our next episode of Tables Turn Podcast with your host, yours truly, Felicia. And today we have a very special guest that I've been promising you. She is an award-winning, best-selling author, a professor. You may see her on LinkedIn sometimes schooling us on all the ways to navigate corporate America. And she's also a professor, but someone that I also consider a dear friend, the one and only Minda Harts.
Hey, girl, hey.
Hey, girl, hey. You look cute.
So do you.
Thank you. So right before we started rolling cameras, we were reflecting on or trying to remember the first time that we met. And neither of us can remember.
I'm having like a brain freeze.
Right?
But I do remember, and I have it in my phone. I have to show it to you. But we hadn't met yet, but it was around like 2017, 2018. And you said, if you don't know Minda Harts, pay attention. We had not met. And because I was like, Felicia said that about me. And I screenshotted it, and I hold it in my photos to this day because at that moment I was at my lowest and just trying to like get myself in a lane, and that meant so much to me. So thank you. Words matter.
Words do matter. And I think that sometimes we have no idea that when we're just going with the feeling that we have for someone that I'd never even met at the time, but your light and your authenticity, I think, was so strong. I could feel it through the screen, through my phone screen. And so I'm thankful that in that moment of feeling it, I said it and that you were able to see it because I didn't know you at the time and definitely didn't know that you were having, a low moment. So thank you for sharing that too.
Yes. Well, thank you for seeing me.
I did then and I do now. And I think that it's just been a beautiful journey to watch. I remember a few things. One was, of course, you just having like a presence on social media. And I watched young women, not just young women, women overall, really of all generations, just start to gravitate to your story and your truth. So can we talk for a minute about where it all began for you?
Yeah. I always say this as a starting point, is that I'm a first-generation college student. That is one of my identity markers, right? And so for me, my parents were working class, so to go off and get that first big girl job, it meant so much to me. And so I didn't think about race, gender identity when I took that first corporate job. I just thought, wow, I'm making money that my parents never made. I'm here to, crack the ceiling. And then I get there and I'm met with all the things race, right? All the things gender and being the only one. And so I didn't know how to navigate that because no one at home talked to me about those things. And so I ended up entering into corporate America about 6 foot tall. And then I felt like I was 3 feet tall when I left. And so I think for so long, Felicia, I just didn't think I had a voice. And that's kind of where it started. As I lost it, I realized if I feel this way, who else feels this way too?
Let's take a step back for a moment to where did you grow up?
I am from California. I'm a Cali girl. But when I was 11, my parents moved to the Chicago suburbs. So Midwest girl too.
And then went on to college.
Went on to college and then went to New York City and then spent a decade in New York City. Yep.
So Cali to New York for a decade. So let's talk about that first day in corporate America. What, if you remember, what did you wear? How did you tell your parents or tell your mom? What were the conversations like for you to stand 6 feet tall?
That's a good question because I remember like it was yesterday. I remember going to my parents and saying, I don't have a lot of money. Can we like rally and figure this out? I'm starting my first day. And we went to Southside Chicago. We went to the beauty supply store. Yep. I got this really outrageous wig that I'm like, I'm going to show up like top tier, right? At the time, it was top tier. And then now I like cringe. But then we went to Ross and I bought like a Calvin Klein suit. And then I like popped out the next day and you couldn't tell me anything. And I was in my consulting class and I was the only woman of color.
Wow.
Yep.
Okay. So you looked around immediately. I'm sure you realized, okay, I'm the only woman of color, only person of color. And in that moment, did you feel out of your element? or did you still feel confident?
Originally, I felt confident because I had the, A1 wig on, but
And the Calvin Klein suit?
Yeah, and the Calvin Klein suit. But then I started to hear that my new colleagues, they grew up with trust fund babies. They went to the Ivy League schools, and then we had our first real big dinner, and there were so many glasses at the table and so many forks, and I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm supposed to be using. And I was just kind of like looking, and I just felt so inadequate at that moment.
And this is in New York City.
Yep.
Okay, so help us visualize, right? You're the only person of color in this space, but then you leave the office each day, and I would imagine like you're surrounded by the city, right? So diverse people of all backgrounds. So were you able to find your tribe and a sense of belonging outside of those walls, or did you carry it out with you?
Well, I was a traveling consultant. So after I was done kind of during the training program, then I was farmed out to other places. So I'd go to Las Vegas, I'd go to Colorado. So I'd go to Texas, right? And I'd be in Texas and I'd be the only one there. So I'd be the only one in my office. Then I'd be the only one on client site. And so I felt like I didn't want to complain, right? Because I felt grateful to be here. I was making good money. And so for a lot of it, I just internalized the feelings, and I just kept smiling through the microaggressions.
I definitely have been there. And I think about, what it does to you, right? To be a young woman, right? In your wig and in your Calvin Klein suit, me too, right? Like, doing all the things to feel as beautiful on the outside as you are on the inside, right? Like you're coming in with that like light on. And, it's almost heartbreaking to know that even in that moment for you, because now you're getting farmed out, right? So like you're the only. How long did it take for you from that first day to realize, right? Like, this doesn't feel great.
I think it was from the day one, right? I couldn't name it, though. I think that was the hard part, because I'm like, wait a second, did they say that? Did they mean that? And so because I was the only and I didn't really have anyone to talk to about it, I would just be like, okay, well, they couldn't have meant that, right? They couldn't have, I write about my manager saying, you people love your bright colors, when he saw I had on burnt orange fingernail polish. You people. And he joked around about how us people like bright colors. And I'm thinking, everybody else is like laughing. Nobody thinks this is a problem. And so, clearly nobody does. So let me just be quiet, right? And I just kept telling myself, Minda, this is better. It's for you. It's for the family. My first bonus check, I was having the hardest day, but then I went home for Christmas and bought my mom her first designer bag, right? So you find these little moments that you try to hold on to, and you're like, okay, I can keep this up. And at the same time, you don't realize how it's deteriorating your well-being.
Yeah. I think for you, it's almost hard to imagine for anyone who may not have experienced it, to see someone beautiful like you, like obviously so on point, to like, it's almost shocking. And people say the same thing about me, shocking to believe that we've experienced those things, but it's the microaggressions, right? It's exactly what you're talking about, because sometimes things are so overt and macro,
right?
Like they're right in your face,
right?
You know what it is, you know exactly the procedure, right? How to complain, how to escalate it, how to hold that person accountable,
right?
Usually, but when it's a microaggression, right? Those subtleties can be like the gaslighting begins,
right?
So talk to me about in those moments of doubt. When you doubted, like, did this really happen? Who did you talk to?
So for a long time, Felicia, I'll be honest, I didn't talk to anybody about it, because I felt like talking about this was like a form of weakness, right? Because we've been conditioned to be strong at the expense of our own well-being. So I was like, it was killing me softly, but I'm like, you know what? I have to make this work. I'm going to make this work. I worked really hard to get to this place in my life. I'm not letting anybody take this away from me, not even Chad, right?
Yeah.
And so I kept moving forward, and I really didn't fully talk about it till the memo came out.
Wow.
Like I literally held it in, because
even in your close circle.
Again, I was the one that everybody came to for advice on work and those sorts of things. And, And so I just didn't want to have to say, me too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Same. And I think for me, when those micro moments build up, they become macro. Like it causes a war inside. And for me, I think I didn't feel like I couldn't talk to anyone.
Yeah.
But I did feel, to your earlier point, like ungrateful.
Yeah.
Right? So your friends, your family are looking at you, buying the nice things now, taking the fancy trips, or, living, in their view, your best life. And on the surface, we are.
Right.
But at what cost?
At what cost?
So let's talk about the cost. I think for you, how long would you say that you went before you finally said, okay, I need to figure this out?
I would say at my 10-year mark. And then
10 years.
I decided to get a therapist because then I'm like, okay, I need to talk to somebody who just doesn't know me. Maybe I'm creating this situation. Let me start here. And so that's when I started to realize that, oh, this is not my fault. Yeah.
Think about that, though, right? Like a decade. A decade of harm, a decade of damage, a decade of mental toil.
Yep.
And it reminds me often, Minda, too, like of how many things we just take outside of work, right? Like maybe in our families or maybe in a relationship or, you have the friends that are nice, nasty, the kind of like, oh, it must be nice.
Must be nice.
Or I love that for you.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, I caught that shade, right? And so to me, it's like the endurement for me.
Yeah.
And so for 10 years, you absorbing, right, all of those things and doubting yourself in those moments. When you finally, if you're comfortable sharing, when you finally sat down with someone, I mean, did you still feel like you needed to hold it, or did you let it all out?
So I went to therapy, but it took a long time for me to, because I'm also kind of like a type A personality, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to go through 3 sessions. We'll have a quick talk and we'll be done. And then 3 sessions turned into 30 sessions and all the things. But I didn't realize, because I am an oldest child too, like I had all of these things just wrapped up in just make it work, right? You're doing this for the family. And I think that we take so much on the chin. Yes. We don't realize what that's doing to our mental health. So for me, I didn't realize that this wasn't making me happy anymore. And I was centering everybody else's happiness and security. And then I just broke out into tears. Like I was participating in my own oppression. And when I swallowed that, I was like, whew, I can stay in my disappointment or I can move to my destiny. And that's what I chose. I
mean, I can't count how many times I've participated in my own disappointment. And, it's so easy to point the finger.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to find the problem. But I don't ask myself enough. I used to, I do now, but I didn't ask myself enough at the time. Like, what am I contributing to this? Why am I staying? Right? What is that?
What is that?
What is that? And so, how are you? Well, I know you started blogging.
Yep.
Right? So that became another outlet. At what point in the journey did that become another space to release?
Yeah, when I started blogging, that gave me permission to be honest with myself, right? To be able to talk my stuff, tell my truth. And I thought, well, if I'm experiencing this, how many other people are? And then I remember the blog it was about mean girls in the office. And that was the one that kind of like, quote unquote, went viral in at that time. And I'm like, wait a second, other people are dealing with this and my carries, in the workplace. And so that's when I realized, wow, it's the vulnerability. It's the being honest, because so many times as women, we put up this mask, right? And this facade. And it's like, oh, but we've already been doing that. So what would it look like if we come to this other side and just be real? Because we're not going to get to solutions if we're not. And that's when I realized that I could finally bring my full self to work. And that was the blog.
Wow. And that was why you were still in the role.
Yep, it was.
I think about, as I get older and more experienced in the journey, I think about how many things I held on to that felt like they were such a big deal or going to be such an embarrassment, or I felt like, the things I can't say because of how I'm perceived or the opportunity cost of it. And now when I look back, none of it really mattered.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so now sometimes when I hear young people, kind of in that same place, I just want to like push them off the ledge. Like, I promise you, it actually doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right? If you use your voice, it will liberate and set you free. But I think taking that step is hard, and you were able to do it.
Yeah.
Let's talk for a minute about voice and the power we're seeing with young people right now.
Yes.
Like, I think my generation, especially, we were supposed to be seen and not heard, put your head down and do the work, and you definitely don't need to even operate like someone that wants to be in front of the camera.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was considered like career suicide, right? If you are in front of the camera, if you're using your voice, if you're walking a red carpet, I mean, you're not a serious executive.
Yeah.
But now I've seen young people like completely flip that on its head. So what are you watching and observing from young people right now through social media and through blogging and YouTubers? Like, how have you seen the shift?
I love the shift.
Yeah.
I love the realness, the rawness. And I think that's why people are going viral and, getting the deals that they're getting, is because they're finally being honest, right? When I go in to do a talk at a company, I'll have like some baby boomer say, well, I wish these young kids would just do their time, and I wish they wouldn't use their voice so much. And I say, wait a second. I said, you know what? They're asking for things they understand their worth. Now, they may not know how to articulate it in all the right ways. That's where you come in. I said, but they're asking for things that you waited 20 years to ask for, or that you haven't even asked for.
Yes.
So think about that, right? You want better for them, right? And so I'm rooting for them to continue to do that, because they're creating conversations, and we're all benefiting from them kind of quote unquote shaking the table. But this is just agency, right? And that should be accessible to every person without fear of retribution.
For sure. And it's like two things for me. I think when I really reflect on young people using their voice, it makes me also think about not only agency, but how many people benefited from our silence?
Yeah.
Right? Companies remained profitable because of our silence. Employees were retained because of our silence, right? Bad behavior was normalized because of our silence. And same thing the other day, I had a woman that I respect, senior leader, say, you just jump all around. You just seem like you're never satisfied. You just jump all around. I said, no, I wasn't willing to sit and work for one company for 30 years hoping to make it to the top.
Right.
When I looked around, and all the women who had been there for 20 or 30 years already had been promoted once or twice, literally. And so I think so many people have benefited from us staying in place. And certainly so many people have benefited from women being silent. And so when there's a quote you always say. Do you remember?
I say that our voices are tied to someone else's freedom.
Our voices are tied to someone else's freedom. And when you made the decision after 15 years to use your voice and to take a leap, I remember it being quietly celebrated, like loudly celebrated. Like, you saw the ones that were cheering out loud. I saw the ones that were cheering in private, right? Because when you're in a role, back to using your voice, like, we couldn't loudly celebrate the memo. We couldn't loudly rejoice that a woman quit her corporate job after 15 years because of microaggressions, because we were still in place. And something that I think about right now with my new independent journey is how many women are still sitting in place who want to take the leap and haven't yet found their confidence or their tribe or had enough yet to do what we've now done. And I'd love for you to share what you feel like it will take for a young woman, maybe even now, who's listening, who feels like they've gotten comfortable, right? The bills are paid. They might be driving the baby Benz. Like, they have all the things that they always dreamt of, but they know deep inside this is not where they should be. Yeah.
I mean, it's hard, right? Because that security, we've been conditioned to look at it that way, right? But I would ask them to consider what their future self needs, right? And for me, the only path that I thought was success was getting to the C-suite and you get your gold watch or whatever happens at the end of that journey. But what I realized was, if I take a bet on me, if I see what's on the other side of that table, Felicia, I sat on that side of the table for 15 years. I know what that is, and I can always go back to it if I need to, but I can't always. But can I sit on that other side? I had to check that out. And now I have a better seat than I had on the seat that I coveted so much that I thought, well, this has the 401k attached to it. Now I get to go out and create my 401k. I get to say yes to the things that bring me joy. I get to allow my voice to help set other people free. And so I would encourage that young woman or even that person who's more seasoned to say, what would it look like if I took that leap, right? And I think that we can't function in fear, right? Yeah. And I think that two things can be true at the same time. We're not saying quit, but what would it look like to start even working on your side business right now to see, right? To start to plant the seeds, just to give yourself that idea to say, okay, for me, for example, I saved a year's worth of salary so that if things didn't work out, I still had a soft place to land. But I was going to fight like heck to make sure that it worked out. And so, but I wanted to know what freedom felt like. And I want all of us to feel what it, to taste freedom. And that doesn't mean you have to leave your job, but it does mean that you have to use your voice. So if you're going to stay in that job, then make sure that you're centering yourself and you're making a seat better for someone who joins you.
Yes, for sure. Because there's no shame at all in having a 9-to-5 and enjoying your 9-to-5, but if it's at what cost, right? So if you are paying a cost that doesn't feel reciprocal, if you're paying a cost that doesn't sit right in your spirit,
right?
You know, you have to go deeper, I think, because you owe it to yourself.
We owe it to ourselves. I mean, when you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we know how to get the basic needs, right? But when we get up to self-actualization, like what does that really look like, right? And we've worked so hard. We deserve to have the belonging. We deserve to have the love, right? And not just in romantic relationships, but in our workplaces, because we spend so much time there, right? So whether you're in your own office or somebody else's, you deserve humanity, dignity, equity, and respect.
Absolutely. I think we talk a lot and center a lot also on physical safety, but we don't talk enough about psychological safety, right? And we normalize it, right? And often, you know, sometimes so much damage is done before we even seek help.
Yeah.
That it's, you know, there's a lot to unpack.
So much.
So much. So you and I were sitting at dinner. And although we don't remember how we met, I remember like every moment after, which is so weird. But you and I were sitting at dinner here in LA less than a year ago.
Yeah.
And what were we meeting about? Wasn't it just general?
Just have some time.
Some time.
Yeah.
And normally we would be in group settings. Yep. And normally you're on the road or I'm on the road. And it was just one of those meant to be moments that the calendars and stars aligned. And we went to dinner, and I remember, you know, you talking about your projects and what was coming up and, you know, all this exciting stuff that you were working on. And I, you know, still had my 9-to-5 job at the time, but knew, you know, I wanted to start developing like books that I felt really passionate about. And I remember shooting my shot. Do you remember?
I do.
How did it go?
Oh, I was just happy to be there with you. So So when you shot it, I'm like, let me catch it. I got this. Let's go. And when you said, you know, let's work together, I was like, let's, you know, because I felt like it was destined.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really was. And people say that sometimes, and they're just like, you know, it's like a soundbite. But for us, I really feel like it was. I really do. From the tweet to the podcast to you inspiring me, and you didn't even know it. And then I remember even through work, we would be in a few rooms or Zoom calls together. And I remember you being on the other side of the screen. And I was like, dang, she really did it.
And then I asked you to write the foreword for my young adult book, You Were More Than Magic.
Yeah. Of course. I wrote the foreword, and it was meant to be.
Yeah.
And I remember in that conversation also feeling seen. Because, you know, you can have a long resume and bio, but when you still endeavor to do something new you want people to see that version of you, not just the current one. And you did, right? Yes. You believed. But I think for me, so for those who aren't as familiar with the story, over dinner, Minda and I were talking about different projects. And, I said, what are you doing with the Memo? Your best-selling book, one of your best-selling books, that really revolutionized and transformed workplace culture 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And, this was less than a year ago. And so that's how much the book resonates with so many of us, that I felt like there was just still something there that we wanted to see on screen. And so I remember the conversation, and you were like, let's do it. Let's go. And I think for anyone, who's listening, who sees their vision, who's willing to take the shot and ask, you also have to be ready. And for me, I knew I couldn't ask you for something that I wasn't prepared or able to deliver. Yeah. And that was important. So even as I started thinking about my own transition out of corporate, I wanted to have a 1-year runway of salary, right? Like enough money to live and not glamorously live, but like the basics were covered plus a little, But then I also wanted to make sure that I had enough money to invest into my idea. And I knew if I could get Minda's book, man, that's going to be the first one. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Again, thank you. I often say success is not a solo sport. Yes. And, it's been like a pleasure. And when you came correct, right? You were ready to go.
Ready.
I think if we could have shot it and delivered it that night, we would have ran out to a
I tell you, one of my regrets, Raj, who's here, who works on our marketing, leads our marketing, will attest to this. I should have been rolling the camera through this whole process. Like, I wish we had a camera at dinner that night. Yeah. And then if you all could have seen the level of speed that I worked on this project. So, Minda, let's talk about that. So from the moment you said yes and we did the deal, what was your experience like working with me and the whole team?
I was already in awe of you, Valisha, but then to like be in business with you, to see like you get stuff done. Like, I'd get a note like, we're filming tomorrow, we're doing this. Be like, okay. And these things people may not know, but when you get your book option, there are people who got their book option that are still waiting on production like years later, right? And so for us to be able to move and have dinner less than a year ago, then to have an actual product and have, a few private screenings under our belt. I mean, you were moving at, Sonic speed race time, and it's phenomenal. It wasn't like, let's do it fast and look at the product. Oh God. No, it's top tier. And so from day one, I trusted you, and we hopped on the Aladdin carpet, and we've been flying ever since.
We've been flying, girl. I mean, like, so trust is the secret ingredient. You and I talk about that all the time. I just remember, let me back up. So I think for anyone who doesn't know us, I don't think they fully realize how hard we go. Yeah. Right? Like, we make it look so easy and we make it look good, and, we tell these beautiful stories, and we're on the internet, and we're, doing all the things that look glamorous, but underneath the hood, for you and I, is like sharp execution, right? We say what we mean, and we mean what we say. We don't overpromise and underdeliver. Yep. We always overdeliver. And what I wanted you to be proud of was not only the experience that you had, but what you said, the product, right? I'm telling you, I said, whatever the budget is for lighting and for the cameras, double it. Like, whatever the budget is for, us having quality, because our community deserves quality. Right?
Man, yeah, we do. So thank you
from
the bottom of my heart, because every time I watch it, it's like seeing it for the first time. It's just beautiful. It's so beautiful. And I just want everybody to experience that.
I can't wait for anyone who hasn't seen it yet to watch it, because we went hard to make sure that there was a level of quality, again, quality, because that's who we are as a culture, right? Like, we're going to go get the wig, right? We're going to get the suit, and we're going to show up. Yeah. And I wanted that to be reflected on screen. Yeah. Right? And so let's talk about Kyla Pratt.
Yes.
So Kyla Pratt, award-winning actress, producer, writer. you and I went to dinner. And first of all, that too just felt natural.
Yeah,
Did it not?
Oh, it was just like we were there for a few hours. Just
Did you know?
Well, again, back to trust.
Yes.
You told me it's Kyla, and I said, okay. Like,
You did.
I was like, okay. And
Minda really trusts me.
I did, and I do. And when you see it, it's her.
It's you.
It's me.
Oh, that just gave me chills.
Yeah.
Oh, that just gets me emotional.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things where sometimes we know ourselves, but it's hard to step outside of ourselves and see what other people see.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
I try sometimes in the mirror. I'm like, what do I really look like? What is it really giving? Like, and not just looks, but like vibe and personality and for Kyla Pratt, I'd met Kyla like twice before. No, more than that, a couple times, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 times before. And it just clicked one day. And I said to myself, man, I can't imagine anyone else playing Minda but Kyla. And Kyla was so on point. I mean, you don't see Kyla Pratt on screen.
No.
You see Minda Harts.
Yeah. She did it. I mean, every time I'm like, yes, that is me.
Yeah.
This is me.
Okay, so you and I were on set.
Yes.
How did it feel to like see your story being portrayed live on set?
It was emotional, Felicia. Like, I don't often talk about this, but, I had a kind of a very interesting childhood. And to get to the point that I'm at right now, and then to get to seeing your book, your story on the screen, and somebody like taking your words, and in the car scenes where, for those who haven't read the memo, my safe haven was the car. And so to see Kyla in those moments, it brought tears to my eyes, because I realized that there's more to us than just our pain, right? It's that triumph moment. And it was in the car that I decided I wanted different. I wanted more. And had I not made that decision in that disappointment, we wouldn't be sitting here right now. Because again, we have 2 choices always, right? And I chose me. And I hope those listening, that they get the memo, that they choose themselves. And to see Kyla making the choices, it was just a beautiful thing. So again, thank you for allowing me to be part of it. And a last thing I'll say is, oftentimes when the author doesn't get to be part of the process, you tend to get pushed out for many reasons. And so, to be there and to witness it, and to be in the writer's room and all those things, it was just, it was a beautiful experience. So again, thank you for trusting the memo, and yeah, it's just a beautiful thing. And I can't wait for others to be a part of it.
I know. I can't wait for you guys to see it. It's really special.
It is.
And I remember watching you on set. It's trippy.
It was trippy.
But I remember the moment, especially in the final scene, and you all will see it when you watch it. But, I turned my eyes away from Kyla playing Minda and turned to you. And I was literally just watching you watch Kyla play you. And I'll be honest, as much as I always knew that the memo would be a dream first book for me to adapt, it's also because of fear. Like, even with my own book, I don't know that I would have been ready to do what you've done.
Yeah.
Right? Because that takes courage.
Yeah.
Just because now you're able to step outside of yourself, maybe for the first time, and see yourself portrayed on screen. And I can't imagine what that feels like. But I do thank you for trusting me with your story, because I really wanted to make you feel not only proud but safe.
Yeah.
Like safe in the environment to just like, okay, I'm a part of this, and not only am I a part of this, I'm in good hands.
Yeah. Yes. You handle, the memo and workplace issues. It's a tough topic, right? But we also did a really great job of lightening the loads and bringing that comedic twist. Because, your work experiences aren't all bad. There are moments of, funny times and relationships. And so I think the nuance of the workplace is what really shines through too.
For sure. Yeah, we had a lot of fun in the script too.
Yeah.
Shout out to Nakia Stevens, our wonderful screenwriter, and Vanna, our wonderful director, Vanna James. They killed it.
It was a dream team. It really
dream
was.
team.
Yeah.
I must say, I am big on identifying talent, but the vibe's got to be right.
But for your first one, Felicia, have you sat back and been like, I did that?
Not really. I've had like quick moments.
Yeah.
Like quick moments. But, I'm just like pounding the pavement still, trying to get the film festivals submissions done and trying to, get us picked up. So I haven't yet had like a real moment. I was planning to take a vacation soon, to be honest, just to like be present.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll do that. Really
I want that for you.
I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Maybe in 2 weeks. Somewhere good. Okay, so let's talk about what you're working on now.
Yes. Well, they say if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. And I don't know if we've even talked about this, but a few years ago, I started taking screenwriting classes because I knew that at some point I wanted to be able to adapt other books and stories that I have that I've been working on into film and TV. And so you helped me take a leap into this space. So right now I'm finishing up my 4th book called Talk to Me Nice. It's about trust in the workplace and also working on some shows that I want to pitch through my agency. And so, I'm just ready for the next chapter of life, and I want to be able to continue the legacy that I've created, but in different ways, right? I want people to meet other sides of me, not just the author, Minda.
I'm just curious, how far out do you plan your steps? Is it years? Is it quarters?
I try to do like quarters.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I have a year plan and then I just kind of work backwards. That's how I tend to, my mind works.
Curious. I get that question a lot too. Is it 5? Is it 3? Is it 1? Okay.
Yeah. Because we know things change so fast.
That's
like I have the 5 year and the 3, but I'm like, wait, what's happening this month?
Yes.
What do we got to do? Now, and as an entrepreneur, you have to be so like flexible. Yeah.
Okay. So as we wind down, I know firsthand, just like you do, what it feels like to feel stuck.
Yeah.
And not even to feel stuck, because that actually feels to me like I'm minimizing it, to be stuck.
To be stuck.
Be stuck, right? And I think, if you may have, a big overhead that you've created, you've bought the house, right? Maybe you have the kids, or maybe you're wanting to plan for, being a parent, or, you're just taking care of loved ones. You're sending money back home, whatever it is. For anyone who is stuck right now, if you could give us just like 3 practical steps, like what can they do today that maybe they haven't thought of?
I think the first one is like super duper practical, and that's check in with yourself. Ask yourself what you want and what's your short-term and long-term goals. Because I think especially as women or, people of color, we tend to do the thing grandma said do or mama said do. And we're like, wait a second, am I going for the C-suite because I even want that? Or do I want to be an individual contributor? So I think first we need to just figure out what is it that you want that time, right? And then secondly, once you kind of like figure that out a little bit or have some ideas, start to invest in your next, right? So I didn't know I'd be writing the book, The Memo, or Write Within, or any other books. I didn't even know I was going to start a blog, but I started investing in myself, and I started taking public speaking classes. I started asking for certain stretch assignments that pushed me out of my comfort zone. And so what would it look like for you to do that, right? So maybe you want to be a coach. What would it look like to get certified and articulate the value that it's going to help your company's bottom line, but knowing that you're preparing for your next. So I think there's a lot of different things. And then lastly, it's okay to dream multiple dreams, right? I think as adults, we forget about our dreams and what we really want to do. And just because you're in your 9 to 5 doesn't mean you can't dream other dreams outside of those hours, right? And so go to the conferences, listen to the podcasts, and lean into people who are doing what you want to do, and let them be your guides. And that's what I did with your book. That's what I did with your podcast. And it helped, and it got me to where I am today. So, don't feel like you have to have $1 million to do it, or you have to have 1 trillion TikTok followers and go viral. It starts with one step, and you get to decide what that next step is.
Best advice. Best advice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So we will be on the road together. So if you haven't yet watched The Memo, hopefully we'll be coming to a city near you soon. And if not, plan for next year.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. It's a wrap.